Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
So welcome to our episode on leading with empathy. You're listening to OT Kung Fu, Organizational Transformation Kung Fu, and I'm here with my friend and colleague Jen Long from Denver, Colorado at Management Possible. And I'm Sandi Verrecchia, coming to you from Toronto, Canada at Satori Consulting. And we're super excited today to talk about leading with empathy because it's something that we've heard more and more about. And we were just in our pre-podcast discussion, we're talking about, is this something new? Is this a new buzz term that's happening? And it's been around for a while. It really has. So Jen, why don't you kick us off with, what is empathy?
What is empathy? Right? It's not new, and it's something that has been around since we've been more focused on the more human workspace, right? So less top down, less micromanaging, less results driven, more engagement based, right? So a number of years. And so empathy is really the ability to connect with people by understanding and appreciating what they are feeling. And Brene Brown had a funny little video on the internet where she does this difference between empathy and sympathy that just makes you laugh, because what she basically says is, because we know she's the maven of vulnerability, is that it's an act of vulnerability because empathy asks you to connect with something within yourself that is along the lines of the same feeling that the other person that you're dealing with may be experiencing.
Right. Yeah, but there's a clear differentiator there though, because it's not, you want to be able to see how they're feeling, but not inject your feelings into it. So it's not, I feel bad right now. It's like, how is this person feeling, and how can we empathize and meet them where they are so that they feel heard and they feel seen and they feel safe in order to continue.
It's a willingness to get to the context, and it's a moment to connect to understand and connect to what that is. And so I think it's not about let me feel what you feel as much as let me connect through understanding, as opposed to sympathy, which is more about feeling bad for someone. So it's that it's disconnecting, right? So you're not sharing in anything. You're just like, oh, well, that's too bad.
Yeah. Right. And
it's recognizing but not connecting. That's
exactly. Yeah. And empathetic leadership is really about giving space for people to be able to share where they are, what's happening to them, not judging, no judgment, and when you're leading with empathy. And that's a difficult thing, because I think, I read somewhere recently that we're in judgment probably 90% of the time, right? 90% of the time we're judging people. We don't know we're doing it. But people that are self-aware and are strong in leading from an empathetic mindset, they step away from the judgment.
They do, right? And so let me dive into why. So, right, let's talk about when we are being empathetic and how do we trigger our own empathy? Because I feel that there's a resistance. People don't want to. They'd rather. It's easier. It's so much easier to stay in judgment. But when you lean into curiosity, right, that's where your connection starts. That's when you're talking and you're asking questions about, tell me more, what's going on for you, seeking context around what's happening for someone. That ability to stay out of judgment and really listen at a deeper level triggers in your brain, right? Actually triggers in your brain what's called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons is that ability to create connection. That's actually the mechanism that turns on for us when we're in a state of empathy. And what that means is we're in low judgment. It takes away the ability to judge when the mirror neurons are active. So
Right.
the science basically says when you allow yourself or push yourself to a place where you stop judging, you open the door for your neuroneurons to kick on, which allows you to be in that state of empathy much more effectively.
Right, right. And there's a calmness about that, right? I think when you're not in that state and you're probably that fight or flight state, right? So it's that what part of your brain? Is that your limbic brain where the fight or flight happens?
Your amygdala.
Yeah, amygdala, that's the one. But when things are calmer and you can actually play in that space, then you're in the active listening zone, and
Right.
people do feel that they can open up, and that psychological safety that people are wanting in their work environments is critically important. They have to feel like they can be safe with what they're saying, and that something that they say, whether it's "I don't understand," "I don't have the answer," "I can't do it," "I need help," uh, isn't going to get them fired.
Right. Right. Where you can the pressure around what's typically a results driven kind of conversation when things are going poorly, right? So you had talked a little bit about this connection between empathy when you're talking about results you had three
Precursor.
concepts that you were connecting.
Yeah. Empathy, engagement, and accountability.
Accountability. My favorite.
I think you would know something about that.
Right? So when you're in the
Yeah.
accountability space, how empathetic, how hard is it to not be judgmental because you've got unmet expectations and you are not getting what you expect or need or wanted and pressure's on. So that's the test, right? Can I be empathetic in that moment? But the empathy slows you down in a good way.
Right, right. But many leaders would suggest that because they're so results driven, right, that the accountability piece is king in this. And so we really should be talking about results. We shouldn't be talking about what's getting in your way, what else you might need in order to make those results happen. And it's a bit of a catch-22 because results, at the end of the day, results are really important. Um, but the way that you engage with people and in that empathetic mindset and the questioning and the curiosity, you may find that there's a valid reason that they didn't hit those results. But if you're in judgment, your mind goes to, well, you didn't hit it because
You've already decided why they haven't hit the
yeah,
results. You've already
yeah,
made a
XYZ.
determination. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess the reason we're talking about it in this context in terms of results versus people first, right? Psychological safety and all that is that it's not a soft thing. We're not asking empathy doesn't mean from a leadership standpoint that you are being soft, that you are not going to get your result. It's the how of how you get a result as opposed to driving, micromanaging, over controlling, overpowering, and ignoring because empathy, lack of empathy, is experienced as being ignored.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's been certainly a lot written and a lot of studies that say that when people feel safe in their work environment and they feel engaged with their work environment, then the results naturally come. So it's not a forced thing. And so it is a shift in a mindset. It's a shift in how we engage with our employees. But um, it's important because that engagement factors, we talked about that triangle, the engagement factor is really important. Why do people come to work every day? They come to work every day because they like their coworkers. They believe in the philosophy of the company, the management leadership of the company, and their work is meaningful. And in this, that they can have good discussions with people that say, we're here to help you and to help you be successful, because when you're individually successful, we collectively are successful. But I don't know, Jen, and you can tell me because you do a lot of coaching as well. Do we teach our leaders to be empathetic leaders?
I don't believe we do. I believe when we look at leaders, we're really looking at are they inspiring people to move in directions? Are they reaching their targets? Are they, modeling what they need to model? But I don't think we're being explicit. We talk about emotional intelligence, and I think empathy falls into the emotional intelligence skill set, because what it does require is seeing the feeling, hearing the feeling when you're in the moment of the conversation. And that you have to be aware and you have to be listening more deeply to really even pick up on what might be going on for someone. Why is their head down? Why are they reluctant to engage? Why are they? And a lot of times the impetus around why is where the judgment lives, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not really interested in the context of the people that we're in charge of. We're more interested, as Simon Sinek says, in being in charge.
That's
And
right.
so that extra space of realizing my role as leader is to acknowledge the people, that I am leading the people, and they are driving the result. They are the result. I think leaders have a hard time maintaining that separation because they are responsible for the result, and that
Mm-hmm.
is their problem. But the saying is, right, it's just like parenting. You don't fire your children for poor performance.
No, no. Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing, and using the parent analogy too, is that resisting the urge to fix everything, right? As leaders, we have these teams below us and teams below them that are full of capable people. But when things aren't going well, or when results are the first and foremost thing, it's easier to jump in to fix than it is to allow them the space to figure out what they need in order to do what they need to do. And so I think that whole notion of, I love using children as analogies, because again, if you fixed everything for your children when they reached 18 or 19 years old, they'd still be living at home, right? So we can't fix them. So why don't we give them the tools, give them the space, give them the ear, and some empathy, so that they can do it on their own and they feel empowered to do the best they can. And empowered employees drive results.
Right. It's kind of like in that moment where, and I'm sticking with the kid analogy because I think about the times when I've struggled with my kids where I feel like I know why this is happening. And it was much more effective when I was able to go back in my own mind and think, oh God, I remember how awkward it was having to ask someone out to prom, or I remember what a struggle it was to audition for the play, or whatever the issue is with the kid where they're feeling like they can't do, or they can't deliver, or whatever. And to resist telling the story, like, because they're your kid and they're probably like, Mom, you're so queer, don't tell me that.
Yeah, I don't care what you
um
did when you were
I don't
17.
care what you did, that was so long ago. But to be able to tap that moment and then just say, I give them language. about the feelings. Help them articulate, I see is this what you're feeling? Is it like this? And they can go, yeah. And then it's, what do you want to do with that? Or tell me more about that. And so I would tell you, empathy is not just the stopping and the taking the moment to not take it over, but it's also the moment to create more connection through the curiosity. And so if we talk about how you apply empathy, it's that moment not only to question, what are you seeing? What is this about? Looking at the why, how do I relate to this? But then continuing on with, tell me more when you engage the person.
Yeah. And it is about building connection. That's the exact word that we need to be using, because empathy is about building connection with the people around you, and allowing them to connect with the people around them, and being curious and listening and showing humility, having some self-awareness as a leader gives them the space and the time and the ability to come, I guess, to really to flourish. And that's what we want out of our employees, right? It's the whole carrot and stick, right? If we dangle a carrot and then hit them with a stick, they're not sure they'll produce, right? They'll produce, but it's
They'll be
short-lived.
compliant. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be very compliant, right? Because you're hitting them with a stick. But it's been shown time and time again that leadership style does not work long term. It
Right.
doesn't.
And it does nothing for motivation, right? That's
No.
all. So it feels like too that, why now? Why are we talking about this right now again, when it's been around for a while? And I think this is a follow on from all of the pandemic struggle about why this is important now, because we're dealing with considerations around everyone's context, right? I love the fact that we've come up with a title for what's happening in the workforce, which is the Great Resignation here in the
Yes.
US.
Yes.
And you can tell me more if that's like the case in Canada. But they've had time to reevaluate what's important. And so being an empathetic leader is important, more so because you're making decisions about people's lives relative to how people are going to go back to work, what's going to happen in this next Delta wave of work environments, and the context of people's work and their experience and what they are feeling is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And even more so is that we still not seeing people, so we're zooming with people. So then that it becomes even more important to stop and to listen and to look at body language and to be curious and dig a little deeper, because I don't know what's going to happen when we come out of this. I know for a fact that, yes, in Canada, people are shifting jobs right, left, and center, because they are looking for something that's more meaningful and more aligned to themselves. And if one of the things that they're lacking in that, and what they're looking for is leadership, they're going to be looking for that empathetic leadership in another organization, and they may find it there. They may have to move on again, but it is something that people are looking for, because people are really feeling now that they don't have to just show up and work and get a paycheck because they had to. They're at choice now, and they want to be at choice. And so to help stop this massive wave of resignations and change and shift that's happening is to ensure your leaders have the right skills to engage with your employees. And it's so simplistic, yet so difficult for many. And so I wonder, Jen, your thoughts on whether this is an innate skill, so some leaders have it, some leaders don't, or if it can be a learned skill.
Yes to both. I believe that some leadership styles lend itself to this skill more readily. People who are more supportive, who are more soft-spoken, who lean into the support first before they kind of lean into results first, are more apt to demonstrate this skill more easily than the more command and control type leader, the more results competitive type leader, which typically we see a lot of in leadership because that's how we see leaders, those kinds of behaviors. It's more of a stretch because it feels like it takes more time. It feels like it's soft. It feels like it doesn't actually do anything but make people feel better, that there's no results really attached to that. And that's where I think the disconnect is. Maybe it's worth talking too about the other extreme of the continuum, right? Where you get instead of the competitive, results focused person who doesn't really deeply listen and will be competitive and make judgment, versus somebody who lives at the other end of not only supportive, super supportive, but almost overly accommodating.
Mm-hmm.
And don't confuse empathy with accommodating.
Right.
Right? It's not about, well, what do you need? Well, what do you want? Let's give you everything you need because I'm empathetic. And I think that might be a kind of a misnomer, but a feeling that people have about why I don't want to get too empathetic, because then they feel like they can just do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm just going to let it ride and let them, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? But never really get results either. So that's the overly accommodating end of it. That's
Right.
not effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is certainly somewhere in the middle that people need to kind of vacillate from one end to the other. And but knowing, you mentioned it takes, the command and control may feel that it takes too much time, and time is a commodity that we don't have a lot of these days. It's things are moving fast and furious, and time is not something that we have a whole lot of, and so taking that extra time may not seem worth it. It might just be easier with the carrot and the stick just to get the results, right? Because we're driven by shareholders. What do the shareholders want?
Well, and it's
Empathetic leaders,
short-term thinking.
maybe, but no.
Right. This
Yeah.
goes, I mean, this is all connected to models, and we talked last time about the hybrid workforce and
Mhm.
an opportunity to reinvent culture. And this kind of leans into that. It directly connects to, because remote work demands empathy, burnout demands empathy, right? Isolation demands empathy. All of these things that are playing into what the culture is currently doing versus the culture you want to create as people, as you establish a new normal, or at least the temporary new normal.
Yeah.
That is the connective tissue. I mean, of
Mhm.
all the skills you need to learn, empathy is primary for connecting to the people you lead.
Right. Right. There was a survey, it was done a while ago, 2013, on Canadians, but they said that 62% of Canadians said that their work was their number one stressor. So that was in 2013, pre-pandemic. Now, but hybrid work environment, people sitting at home alone, that number has gone up exponentially from 62%. And so you can't ignore the fact that your people need more. They need different. And it's, whether it's a learned behavior or innate behavior, the behavior has to happen. And so we should be really looking at our leaders and saying, what do we need to do to support you to be a stronger leader for your people? As you mentioned, what Simon Sinek had to say, and is something is like, it's not, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of the people in your charge. Right? So taking care of the people in your charge. So that says nothing about results.
Right.
Right? It I think, to me, it says accountability is a byproduct of that, and engagement is a byproduct of that, and results and innovation are a
Right.
byproduct of that, if you take care of the people in your charge.
Well, right. And you demonstrate it. You model
Mhm.
that all the time. And how you model it now, I think is seen or not seen, because I'm connecting or I'm ignored. That's the choice you're making. If you're going to exercise your empathy, if you're going to learn how to, actually be more empathetic, take time, get out of your judgment. If you're somebody who knows your judge, who you're quick to make assumptions, you got to work on it. You're the ideal candidate to start to, what are you going to do to practice? And this, because it's an emotional intelligence skill, it's all about awareness and being
Mhm.
self-aware in the moment. And what are you going to do to help to be more empathetic? How are you going to start to apply it? What is your strategy to do that?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? And sometimes that means giving your people permission to tell you when they feel ignored, giving your people permission to say to your staff, I am going to work on my empathy because I feel I really lack it and it's impacting how we work together. And to be able, it's like, I'm an alcoholic and I need to work on that. Putting it on the table so that people who are, state your wake. Well, when I'm being more results driven, when I'm ignoring people and empathy is required, pull me up, call me out on it.
Mhm. Yeah. It's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking about the millennial population. So lots of people talk about how odd they are and how strange they are and how they're so different than everybody else. And that's total judgment because really, and I've said this before, I think on our podcast, when I was 20, I probably had the same similar views and work ethic as many of these millennials. And I just didn't have the technology background. I didn't have a cell phone in my back pocket. But if we're in judgment about the work ethic of this group, it's going to be very difficult to meet them where they are and be empathetic toward their needs and what they need to be successful. So I think there really needs to be a mind shift.
Well, right. And you tapped on something there too. And being empathetic does not mean you are accepting,
Mm.
right? I don't have to accept when I get context for what's going on, there's opportunity to connect, right? So, an example would be if you're holding somebody accountable. Just because I understand and now have context around why you made the choices you made doesn't mean I accept your choices,
Hmm.
right? So
Absolutely.
it's don't confuse empathy with giving in.
Hmm.
It's the willingness to not judge and to listen deeply and to tap the feeling of, I see why you're frustrated, or I see why this might be disappointing, right? Whatever the name of that is. But that doesn't mean I'm in a place of accepting what's happening.
Hmm.
If
Right.
I'm leading this and we need to do something differently, or I'm trying to create change and you are resisting, right? You have preferences. If it's just easier if I do this. And while I can be empathetic to, yes, with all that's going on in your context, I understand why you would choose the easier path.
Right.
However, how does that choice get us to a different reality, which is where we're trying to go? And it's
Right.
the
Right.
willingness to have that whole discourse.
Right. Which takes time, as we talked about. I think that's the thing. It's not a soft skill, and I think that's, for me, that resonates the most because I think that's what leaders are afraid of. I don't want to be seen as soft. I need to drive my results, and if I have to lead with this empathy thing, then people are going to think that I'm too soft, and that's not what it is at all. It is truly all the things that you just said. It was, the active listening, the engaging, meeting them where they are, and then seeing where it goes. At the end of the day, we're still running a business, right? And we're not going to let them get away with, murder because we want to be empathetic. Not going to happen. But gosh, give it a whirl to understand why it is that they're doing what they're doing. What's the And I can remember I was listening to something or reading something, or maybe my husband said it. I'm not sure, but about people in driving cars, and
Mhm.
and he's the worst, right? Oh my gosh, everybody who cuts him off or goes in his lane, he's getting really angry, lack of a better term, and or more colorful term. And and I'm always saying to him, but like, just let them in. And he's like, no, no, they don't deserve. But you don't know. You don't know why. Their wife might be pregnant and just giving birth in the back seat, and they need to get the hell to the hospital. You don't know.
You don't know.
So let's be empathetic, not just as leaders, but as people, perhaps in many situations.
Right. Because if you can do it in the work environment could you do it? Could you do it on your way to work? Could you do it on the weekend? Could you do it with your kids? It changes how you connect to your community. It changes how you connect to your family. And that connection is what makes the experience more satisfying, because you don't feel ignored and you don't feel unheard and you don't feel unsafe. And empathy is in your prefrontal cortex, which is where trust lives, which is where connectivity is, which is where ideas live. All that stuff, hangs out together for a reason. And pushing that, feelings are so much a part of communication that language just really serves to identify what the feelings are.
Mm-hmm.
And that emotional awareness is as much part of our connection to other people as the language, as the roles, as the teams, as all that other stuff that sits between us.
Mm-hmm.
And empathy is a powerful tool, because when you connect, you understand, and then that mutuality gets people in alignment, gets you to the change you're looking for, gets you to the engagement and discretionary effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lever to pull.
Yeah. Innovation. It's certainly, there is lots of things that you think about in innovation. All companies want it today. And empathy is something that is a lever for innovation. So it's a win-win. So what should our leaders take from this, Jen? Like, I think we've talked about kind of what they need, how they need to lean in, and how they need to be more curious. But maybe a stepping stone might be to get together in their leadership teams and talk about how they leading with empathy, and what does it mean for them and their organizations, and to actually start talking about it. Yeah.
Right?
So it
Do they
becomes,
value it? Is it important, and how is it important? And is it more important to some of your leaders than others? And where are you practicing it?
mm-hmm.
And conversely, where are you not practicing it where you should be, where it's a lever that you should pull, but you don't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's an excellent takeaway for our listeners today, is to take it back to their teams and start to talk about it.
Right. Ask the question, and then think about, do your own self-reflection. When was the last time you should have been empathetic? You weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your opportunity coming up when empathy is going to be a better strategy for what you got coming up?
Right.
And try it.
Right.
And reflect on it. How did it work? How did it work?
Absolutely. I think successful CEOs will tell you that it's a strategy that does work, but it starts with conversation.
That's right. Conversations are your relationships. Your relationships are your culture. You are
there
the
you
steward.
Go. Excellent.
All right. Very good. So with that, we will allow you more time in your day. Thank you for listening. Put your comments in the comment box. Would love to know what you think about how empathy is working in your organization. If you've run any of the experiments that we offer up, how did it go? Would love to know what you learned and hear back from you. So thanks again for listening.
All right. See ya.
Thank you for listening, and please visit Sandy's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca, and Jen's website at managementpossible.com. Thanks again.